There's a kind of love that goes beyond admiration, beyond chemistry, even beyond devotion. It's the love that sees you at your most disheveled, emotionally, mentally, spiritually, and doesn't look away. Not out of obligation, but because that mess, that chaos is real. And in that realness there's beauty. That's where Nietzsche's concept of amor fati, the love of one's fate, becomes deeply personal. When someone embraces your fate, including your contradictions and imperfections, they're not just tolerating who you are. They're choosing to love you, not in spite of your shadow, but because of it. In a world obsessed with curated lives and perfect exteriors, it's revolutionary to be loved while breaking down. Think of the times you've shown someone your rawest truth, when you failed, wept, raged, or confessed. If they stayed, not to fix or pity you, but simply to be there, that's not just affection, that's existential loyalty. Nietzsche would say that true love is not a form of weakness or surrender. It is instead a mutual recognition of strength. It's standing beside someone while they confront the abyss of themselves and not blinking. It's refusing to flee from their doubts, their fears, their crises. It's seeing their brokenness not as a burden, but as an honest chapter in a beautiful story still unfolding. One of the clearest signs that someone loves you very much is this: they allow you to fall apart in front of them. They do not shame your darkness or recoil from your confusion. They don't offer quick fixes or force you into optimism. They sit in the discomfort with you, because they understand, consciously or not, that this is part of the human condition. Nietzsche taught us that pain is not an error. Suffering is not a glitch in the system. It is the crucible where authenticity is forged. So if you've ever had someone say, "You don't have to be strong right now," and mean it, hold on to that. That's someone who loves you beyond utility, beyond appearance, beyond convenience. That is love rooted in the courage to witness. Nietzsche often warned us against the seduction of comfort. Love, real love, is not always comforting. It demands truth. And sometimes that truth is difficult, messy, even ugly. But to be seen in that space and still be cherished, that's a sacred kind of intimacy. If someone allows you to be emotionally ugly and doesn't retreat, it's not just empathy, it's something deeper. It's a sign that their heart has made a commitment to your soul, not just your persona. One of the most overlooked signs of deep love is this: someone who loves you deeply doesn't try to own you. They don't cage your spirit or confine your choices to preserve their comfort. Instead, they want your freedom, even when that freedom might lead you away from them. That's not passivity. That's the ultimate act of love rooted in Nietzschean philosophy. Nietzsche believed that love, like all powerful forces, has the potential to become possessive and controlling, a subtle form of domination. But when someone truly loves you, they don't seek to dominate. They seek to witness your becoming. They don't measure love by proximity or constant presence. They measure it by how fully you are allowed to become who you really are, even if that becoming unsettles them. This is not the romanticized idea of, if you love something, set it free. It's far more profound. It's staying present in the tension of uncertainty. It's watching you take risks, knowing those risks might change you. It's encouraging your evolution, even when that evolution makes your relationship less predictable. This kind of love is hard. It's not sentimental. It requires ego death. The person who loves you this way has accepted that you are not theirs. Not really. You are your own unfolding. They have placed their faith not in control but in connection. They are not afraid of your growth. They are afraid only of a love that asks you to shrink. Nietzsche's ideal human, the Übermensch, is someone who lives beyond herd morality, beyond societal expectation, someone who creates their own values. In the context of love, the Übermensch partner is one who supports your self-creation. They do not love a version of you that flatters them. They love the version of you that is most alive, even when it challenges the status quo of the relationship. Have you ever had someone say, "I want you to do what's best for you," and mean it, even if it meant distance, discomfort, or change? That's love. Not needy, anxious love, but bold, existential love. That's the kind of person who believes in your path, not just your presence. And this matters deeply, especially in midlife. Because at this stage we often begin to unearth parts of ourselves we ignored in our younger years. desires, ambitions, forgotten selves. The people who truly love us don't fight that resurrection. They welcome it. They understand that loving someone means allowing them to grow beyond who we need them to be. So if you are loved by someone who loosens their grip, instead of tightening it when you begin to change, that's not detachment. That's reverence. That's a soul-level respect. That's love without fear. There's a quiet misunderstanding in how we often perceive love, that it should always be soft, agreeable, and comforting. But Nietzsche would disagree. He believed that anything that helps us grow, including pain, challenge, and discomfort, is not only valuable but essential. Through that lens, one of the most revealing signs that someone truly loves you is this: they challenge you. Not to prove superiority, not to control, but because they respect your mind and believe in your potential. When someone loves you very much, they don't let you linger in half-truths or self-deceptions. They confront you, not with cruelty, but with courageous honesty. Because to them, your clarity matters more than your temporary comfort. Think about the times in your life when someone said the thing you didn't want to hear, but needed to. Maybe they pointed out that you were playing small, or avoiding a truth, or betraying yourself. Maybe it hurt. Maybe it made you angry. But if it came from someone who stayed beside you after they said it, someone who didn't use your vulnerability against you, then that was not rejection. That was a powerful form of love. Nietzsche saw confrontation as a form of intimacy. If we're never challenged, we remain stagnant. And no one who truly loves us wants us to stay stuck. Love in its highest form does not pacify us. It awakens us. It risks conflict for the sake of truth. And that risk, that boldness, is a deep sign of emotional investment. This kind of love shows up when someone says, "You're not being true to yourself," even if that statement threatens your peace. It shows up when they challenge your resignation or call out your excuses. Not because they're judging you, but because they see you, and they want you to live in alignment with that truth. Now, this doesn't mean every criticism is love. Nietzsche also warned us to examine motives. The kind of challenge we're talking about here is never rooted in superiority or manipulation. It's grounded in the belief that you are capable of more. It's what happens when someone holds up a mirror, not to shame you, but to help you return to yourself. Especially in long-term relationships, this can be one of the most powerful and painful signs of love, because it requires both parties to endure tension in service of authenticity. It's not always romantic in the moment, but it's one of the rarest forms of respect. So if someone in your life holds you accountable, calls you out with compassion, and stands beside you while you wrestle with that truth, don't mistake it for criticism. It might be one of the clearest signs that their love runs deep, not because it's easy, but because it's real. There's something sacred about silence in a relationship, not the silence of resentment or withdrawal, but the silence that emerges when words are no longer necessary. One of the most profound signs that someone loves you very much is their comfort in your silence. When they can sit beside you without rushing to fill the space and still feel connected, that's love. Nietzsche understood the limits of language. He believed that the deepest truths about life, love, and existence often couldn't be spoken. That which can be said, he once wrote, is already superficial. The real stuff, the pain, the longing, the soul, exists beneath words, and only those who love us deeply can sit in that realm with us. In the middle of life, especially after decades of relationships, responsibilities, and resilience, we come to realize that presence matters more than performance. The people who truly love us are the ones who don't need constant validation, constant proof, or constant conversation to feel close. They feel our essence even in stillness. Think of a moment when you were grieving or exhausted, or just utterly emptied by life. The person who stayed, not with advice, not with distractions, but simply with presence, that was not just kindness. That was existential companionship. They didn't need to do anything. Their being was enough, and that is one of the purest expressions of love. Nietzsche called for becoming who you are, a journey that isn't loud or glamorous. It's often quiet, slow, and riddled with solitude. To be loved in that process, when you are still becoming, still unclear, still uncertain, is to be held without demand. It's love that doesn't push, doesn't invade, doesn't demand a performance. It simply abides. This kind of love is especially meaningful as we age, because many of us have learned that words can lie. People can say all the right things and still disappear when it matters most. But the one who stays, silently, steadily, without requiring you to entertain or explain, they love you deeply. They're not afraid of the void. They're not here for distraction. They're here for you. And here's something even more powerful. Silence tests love. When conversation fades and daily stimulation isn't enough to hold two people together, what remains? If there is still comfort, still safety, still warmth, then love is present. Not the love of fantasy, but the love of truth. So if there's someone in your life who doesn't flinch at your quiet, who doesn't fill every pause with noise, who simply exists beside you in your stillness, recognize what that means. They're not there to avoid their own discomfort. They're there because they see you, even in silence, especially in silence. Real love has a peculiar way of showing up in the subtle, almost invisible spaces. It's not always about the grand gestures or passionate declarations. Often, it's found in the way someone picks up on what you don't say, the way they sense your hesitation, notice the flicker in your eyes, or ask about the silence behind your "I'm fine." When someone truly loves you, they tune into the frequencies beneath your words. Nietzsche was a master of examining the unsaid. He believed that much of what we express is not in our statements, but in our hesitations, our contradictions, our silences. He called for a life of depth, a life that interrogates the surface to get to the soul. When someone loves you with that kind of attention, they become an interpreter of your interior world. Not because they're trying to invade it, but because they care enough to understand what even you may not yet understand about yourself. This is different from ordinary listening. Most people hear your words and respond to the surface. But someone who loves you deeply listens with their whole being. They read between the lines, they remember the small things. They ask follow-up questions that no one else dares to ask. They see the patterns. They notice when your voice tightens. They feel when something is off, even when you're smiling. There's a deep psychological comfort in being emotionally understood without having to over-explain. As we age, especially after decades of managing expectations, relationships, and roles, we start to crave this kind of attunement. Not the love that demands performance, but the love that sees through it. Have you ever had someone gently ask you, what's really going on at just the right moment? Not to pry, not to judge, but to connect. That's not coincidence. That's love. That's someone who isn't content with the mask. They want the real you. Even the unspoken, unfinished, unraveling parts. Nietzsche might call this a form of will to truth within love, a drive not to possess, but to witness, to know, to go beyond illusions and meet each other where the soul lives, not just where the persona performs. And that kind of love, the kind that listens you into existence, is rare. So if someone consistently hears the things you don't know how to say, if they respond to your inner world instead of just your outer expressions, if they hold space for the things you haven't yet put into words, that's more than emotional intelligence. That's deep love. That's someone choosing to connect with the essence of who you are, not just your role in their life. We all carry shadows, the unhealed wounds, the hidden fears, the parts of ourselves we've been taught to hide or deny. Most people, even those with good intentions, will try to fix your pain. They'll offer solutions, distractions, or silver linings, not realizing that this impulse often comes from their discomfort, not your need. But when someone loves you very much, they don't rush to repair your darkness. They respect it. They sit with it. They let it be. Nietzsche understood this deeply. He didn't believe in erasing pain. He saw suffering as essential to becoming. One must still have chaos in oneself, he wrote, to be able to give birth to a dancing star. This isn't just poetic, it's psychological. He believed that transformation doesn't come from escaping our darkness, but from confronting it. And those who love us deeply intuitively understand this. They don't turn away when we descend, they walk beside us. This is particularly relevant in midlife and beyond, because by now most of us carry a complex emotional history, of regrets, losses, unfinished dreams. We don't need someone to fix us. We need someone who can witness us, someone who can hold space for all the contradictions, the strength and the fear, the wisdom and the doubt, the hope and the exhaustion. Think about the last time you were in a dark place, emotionally, spiritually, even existentially. The person who didn't interrupt that process, who didn't minimize it, who didn't try to cheer you up too soon, but instead offered quiet presence, warm food, a simple, "I'm here when you're ready." That's not passivity, that's love at its most powerful. Nietzsche would call this affirmation a willingness to affirm life, including its deepest suffering, without denial or avoidance. When someone loves you enough to stand in that space with you, without pushing you to be better, it means they trust your inner process. They don't need you to be happy to feel close to you, they just want you to be real. This kind of love is rare because it's not about control, it's about trust. It doesn't impose a timeline on your healing. It doesn't demand emotional neatness. It recognizes that growth is non-linear, that grief lingers, that sometimes all we need is a hand that doesn't let go. So if someone in your life respects your sadness, doesn't pathologize it, doesn't rush it, doesn't shame it, but simply walks beside you through it, know this: that's not weakness, that's not indifference. That is one of the most courageous and tender signs that their love is true. They don't need you to shine to love you, they just need you to be. At the heart of all genuine love is this: the conscious, repeated choice to stay. Not out of duty, not out of habit, but out of a raw, clear recognition of who you are, and a desire to keep walking alongside you anyway. This is where Nietzsche's philosophy lands in the most human of places. To love someone, in his view, is not to idealize them. It is to see them clearly, flaws, fears, failures, and still say yes. This isn't the passive, unconditional love often romanticized in culture. Nietzsche would challenge that idea. He believed that love without clarity is just projection. Real love, he argued, is forged in honesty. It is demanding, not because it punishes, but because it invites us to meet the truth of ourselves and each other without illusion. To be chosen once is wonderful, but to be chosen again and again, even after the gloss fades and the masks fall, that's sacred. Especially for those in midlife and later years, this resonates deeply, because by now the layers of pretense have worn thin. You're no longer trying to impress, you're simply trying to be. And the person who meets you in that state, not the version of you who was achieving, performing, or pleasing, but this version, with history and heart and scars, that person sees something lasting. Nietzsche taught us to distrust anything that felt too ideal, too pure, too untouched by struggle. Love, for him, was not innocent. It was earned. It was tested by time, by hardship, by existential doubt. And if it endured after those tests, if it still burned after disappointment and conflict and silence, then it was real. So if you have someone who sees your weariness and doesn't flinch, who knows your insecurities and doesn't weaponize them, who could walk away but keeps choosing not to, you are deeply loved. They see you not as a fantasy, but as a full person. And in a world that often demands you be better, easier, or more, this kind of love tells you, you are enough. Not because you've stopped growing, but because your essence, even as it evolves, is worth staying for. That's not infatuation, that's not convenience, that's not habit. That's love grounded in truth. The kind Nietzsche would have honored. Not the perfect union, but the honest one. So let's end with this. Love isn't just found in the grand, sweeping gestures. It's revealed in the quiet decision, made over and over, to stay, to see, to choose. And if someone does that for you, if they still choose you with eyes wide open, then you already know the deepest truth of this entire reflection. You are loved, very much.